On this episode of A State of Control, we talk about the makeup of the modern day programmer. What impact has the changes in the industry done for programmers? What does it take to be a successful programmer? And how do people who want to get into control system programming find their career path? All that and more on A State of Control.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A State of Control.
A State of Control, episode 52. Good luck, kid.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, because every voice matters.
and by Extron Electronics.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that focuses on the control programming and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host today. Thanks for joining us. So I think today's show is going to be one that is going to be very relatable. I think we're going to get a lot of head nods and we're going to get a lot of affirmation. Whether you're on the show or listening to the show, I think you'll all find a way to connect with this one. We're going to be talking about the role of the modern day programmer. And with me to do so is a group of guests that I think will very easily weigh in on this. And first and foremost, I'll start with my partner at A State of Control. He goes by Uncle Richie, and his name is Rich Fergoza from Fergoza Design. Rich, how are you today?
Good. Well, mellow West Coast greetings, little rainy West Coast greetings for once, finally. So glad to be back, glad to be 100%, and looking forward to chatting with this cast of characters.
Excellent. And another familiar face. His name is Dave Hatz from AVI Systems. Hi, Dave. Great to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. And last but not least, it comes to us from the Pacific Northwest, and his name is Nick Miller. Nick, how are you today?
Doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me on. And Rich, you're welcome for that rainy weather finally.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we've talked a lot on this show about the evolution of control and the audiovisual industry. And I think today what we're going to focus mostly on is what's the impact been on programmers? What is the modern programmer's role these days? And how is it going to change moving forward? So, Rich, we've been through a lot together, and we probably know about the dawn of the AV control programmer. What do you see as the biggest difference between maybe, 5-10 years ago and now, as far as the programmer's role and responsibility and the focus of a programmer these days?
Obviously, the biggest thing is that the control systems programmer has moved from having to be a hardware specialist more often than not. When we were first started out, in the old days, there were still guys that we were soldering D-sub 25 pins on modems and terminating VGA cables, and those were the things that you still had to check for when you were a control systems programmer 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. You were still dealing with some serial communication. You were dealing with analog operations, just a much different group of interfaces that you had to concern yourself with, that you needed to know whether they were functioning or not, or at least be able to have enough knowledge to troubleshoot it, to work with the technicians if you weren't a part-time technician at the same time. Now, obviously, you're talking about control systems programmers have to have a sophisticated understanding of networking. And it started gradually. At first, it was like, okay, can you find an IP address? Then can you figure out, if you're working remotely, how can you port forward something? Then it became a matter of, okay, well, now do you know the basic ports for communication or the syntax? And now we've moved completely beyond that. Now we're moving into, do you understand how to configure a switch, how to deal with IGMP, how to deal with every acronym under the sun that when you sit down with an IT professional, you have to know a lot of the backbone and infrastructure functions of a network as opposed to just an IP address. And that's probably been the biggest change, in that we're now dealing in data packets, and specific packets, and getting these packets from one side to the other. And there's just as many challenges. It's just not a wire anymore. I mean, and at times it's even more difficult, because with a wire, you could physically throw a tester on it and say, yay, go, no go with it. Now there are, at least 6 other variables that you have to consider why you're not able to turn on a circadian lighting system necessarily. And so that has been a steep learning curve for some. I don't think for control systems programmers, it's been as a steep curve, because we deal with computers all day long. So it just, as a byproduct where we're kind of dealing with it, and you go even further, you figure that, we probably deal with our computers in our spare time as much as we care not to admit. So I think that is, in a nutshell, saying, that's where we've moved. We've moved into we're moving more into virtual control spaces as opposed to physical control spaces.
So Dave, Rich talked a lot about, and it, very interestingly, the shift from hardware to software, the shift from hardware to networking. As somebody who works for an AV integrator, there's still a lot of hardware influence, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But what is the makeup that you found that can make a programmer most successful? Is it somebody who has that hardware knowledge and background, or is it somebody who is really more software and computer science based, or IT based?
Honestly, I have a hard time pinpointing the exact competencies that are, a requirement, because, if you look around the industry, we've all come from such different backgrounds. We all have different fortes, but there are so many really awesome programmers out there that, I think the commonalities are, I think it's the drive and the desire that, the aptitude and attitude, in my mind, that are the biggest key to, being a successful programmer, because so much of the things we touch don't work the way they're supposed to the first time. Whether it's the equipment, whether it's our attempt to talk to the equipment, to move those bits and bytes, you need to be capable of, of both laying a plan for how you're going to, the interface you're going to create, the automation you're going to create, that experience for your end user, that's the desired outcome. And taking that, building the plan, and then implementing it, and being able to adjust when things don't go quite right. And so, the programmer becomes, yes, they're writing code, they're building configurations, they're typing on their keyboard, but the thought process behind it, how they go through and approach, both, the way, setting up their roadmap of how they think they're going to tackle it, but then also dealing with it when a version of firmware comes out and breaks something, when a manufacturer's documentation is missing the one line that you need, when, oh wait, this display got swapped for another one and the new one doesn't have a functional capability that I need. It's that being able to, to roll with it and to overcome obstacles. That it's a soft skill, but in my experience, that's one of the biggest keys to, to really becoming a successful programmer.
So Nick, following up on what Dave said, and as well as Rich, is a programmer the right title for what we do? And because it sounds like there's a whole bag of skills, and I'm sure that you could probably piggyback on what's already been said. But what properly describes what the outsiders think of as a control system programmer?
Yeah, honestly, I think as our systems get more software defined as opposed to hardware defined as they have been traditionally, the traditional idea of the control system programmer is kind of going to have to evolve, and it's probably going to go away to a more kind of software engineer title or some other engineering title, because really it's been a long time since all we dealt with was control systems. If that's what we ever did, we're dealing more with traditional software development now than we ever have in the past, and it's only going to get continue that trend. I mean, we've got DSPs running on commodity Intel hardware at this point. We've got control systems being virtualized, which is a good thing, I believe, for our industry. To fall more into the mainstream technology sector only allows us to enhance our profile a little bit more and get our foot more in that door and gain a little bit more traction when we're trying to sell or explain what it is we do. Because honestly, for the last 10, 15 years, it's been really hard to describe exactly what it is we do to someone from outside our industry.
Yeah, well, and it really becomes we're technology integrators, not
Right.
audio video integrators at this point in time. So, I mean, we're almost it's like the wizard of AV integration is what the traditional programmer is, and because they're the ones who, they're that mythical beast that makes it all work,
Right.
So the idea that it takes these different skills to do program, and what I hear in this conversation too is that it sounds to me like there's some architecture involved too. What is so how do we differentiate ourselves, I guess, from those, and Dave, I'll take this to you. How do we differentiate ourselves from those who are just coming in and saying, hey, you know what, this stuff's easy, you click a few buttons and you get a working system, and of course there's some merit in that the manufacturers are trying to provide these easier solutions, but there's a bit of that's watering down what is the hardcore aspects of what we do.
Yeah, well, I think it's an understanding that needs to be built, that this isn't just simple. The outcomes are simple, but there's a lot of detail and a lot of steps along the way. And so, I think, getting the understanding within our organizations is one challenge, and relaying that where necessary to our clients, to our end users, is a totally different challenge. I think internally to our organization, I think one of the biggest pieces that we try for is sort of a mentorship and a stepping through the processes, so that someone who's that less experienced programmer has a path to see the right way to do it, to learn by example, to see that it's not just, okay, I put 5 buttons on an interface, I click them and I'm done. It's, okay, what happens when a device is powered off? What happens, the interactiveness between components, the integration, Nick hit on it, that more and more we're integrating with other software systems, with other platforms. We're not just, it's not just the boxes in our system or virtualized, system as it many times is. It's we're integrating with other platforms, with scheduling systems, with building management systems. And all of that takes time to gain the experience, but it also takes time to learn what to expect. So what does good look like? And I think, the idea of mentoring and, the teaching aspect of that is something that's hard to get from a manufacturer, or from going to a 3 or a 5-day class from any of our manufacturers. It's the sort of the practical application that, each of our companies, whether we're an integration, whether we work, large organization, small organization, I think having somebody who that junior person can look to and learn from, learn the right way to do it, but also, having that mindset that we're not just doing it the same way we always have. As an experienced programmer, I'm still open to new ideas. And it's that two-way street of bring me your ideas, I'll bring you mine, and let's all learn from each other. I think that's where we've been most successful.
Rich, I'm going to jump over to you, because I think that you're perspective on this is unique in that you also have a lot of involvement on the residential side, and the residential side's a little bit more touchy feely. We've talked a lot about the technology side of this, but what about the people side? What requirements are there on the people side that need to go into the makeup of a successful programmer?
Wow. It's there was the running joke is that we would never let the programmers loose upon the clients, and there are instances where what makes you a very good software developer and your skill set doesn't always translate in an environment where you're dealing with somebody's homes and their taste and style and feelings. However, I think it's a knock that we just kind of throw on guys just because a lot of times we didn't understand what they were doing, and so I could come in and I could with some of my clients I've been their owner agent for 15 years and still I'm the programmer. I've done everything for them for 15 years, and when it comes down to what this is Rich, he's our programmer, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and you go with it. But realistically, I think that in any pursuit, you first have to take a look at whether, you are comfortable operating in a team or you're a personality that's more suited to working alone. I think once you differentiate that, and you have to be able, either as a manager, as a business owner, or as that individual themselves, to be able to admit where your strengths and weaknesses are. I think once you first determine that, I think that very much allows you to decide where you can fit within it. Maybe you can go to your team and say, hey, look, I'm more comfortable, I'm more efficient as an in-house support person. I have several friends who are in the industry that are phenomenal at what they do, but their people skills, it's just not in their comfort level. And so, why would I put somebody in that position when they're not the most efficient? Other ones, where are field generals. They have that aptitude to be able to come in, work with the rest of the team, all of the associated trades, and filter between those. That's a very specific skill set that I don't think that we train enough on, and we don't encourage enough with a lot of the guys that we have. So, it goes back to balance. And I think anything when you are dealing in the construction industry, which residential, we're in the construction industry. We are there with the plumbers and the electricians and the landscapers and everybody else. And you have to realize and embrace and go, yes, I am a construction tradesman. As such, I need to be able to operate within that industry and within that structure. And, there was always the knock with the AV guys, with the cowboys. They just kind of come in, they had no idea what was going on, and they just run roughshod over everything, and then everybody would be upset at them. So, in commercial, I think that there was a far better understanding that you were part of a trade, and you were a trade within a larger association of trades. So for guys, if the guys that I mentor right now, it's build up your skills, public speaking skills. Especially now, like hackathons, they're fantastic for stuff like that because it throws you into the fire of learning how to deal with people and work with people. And I normally tell the kids that I counsel, I'm like, go in and don't even go with people find a way to make it work. That's a real world experience that you're going to generate at that point. If you want to build code on the fly, or you want to generate a product or solve a problem, and you're the only one that's thrown in, and you got 3 other people that you've never met before, but you've got to get this done, do something like a hackathon. They're great for things like that. And I think that we have opportunities to attract programmers and to give them much more of a foundation other than good luck, kid. Figure it out when you get there, which happened to all of us. And so I truly don't, as much as I want to say, yeah, you've got to pay your dues and here you go. Back in my day when I used to program with a stone tablet and a spike, you know. And I'd write 010101 on my chalkboard, and that was a system. And by cracky, we liked it. But no, there's lots of tools, and I think it really is upon us at this point to expand upon them. That you will be better at what you do if you can learn and build up your experience in dealing with others and dealing in a team atmosphere. And I think that's something that we don't talk about as much, because programming is a solitary function a lot of times, and I think to a detriment from a project standpoint.
Nick, I'm going to jump over to you. Rich and Dave both mentioned in different capacities mentorship and training, and I think that's been a challenge in the industry as a whole, as well as especially in the programming side. We've always looked to find what's that career path look like? How do you find people? How do you develop people? What type of experience or insight can you provide in terms of somebody that wants to do control programming, how they could get involved, and what are some of the things that they should know in getting into it?
Well, one of my favorite soapboxes for the last 10 years or so has been that I would rather take a technician that's been in the field for a few years and mentor them and grow them as a programmer. If they show aptitude, they're going to be way ahead of someone who may just be graduating with a computer science degree or something coming from a traditional development background and trying to jump into the AV industry from the outside. The person who's been in AV is going to have a head start. That's changing a little bit, as we talked about already, with software defined systems, but it still holds true currently that you have to know AV, you have to know the workflow of the equipment, you have to have hands-on experience with the hardware to be able to reasonably define what's possible and what's not. And in order to be successful, you got to know the players before you can start the game.
So I think that's a great point, and I've kind of heard from different people that and I do believe you need to know systems first, but I do see that we're starting to see that shift to being able to know these programming languages that we just haven't been exposed to, and the software development techniques. Is there any? Is there validation there, or is that's something that you would say is accurate?
Well, I think as we're finally I feel like we as programmers are driving the manufacturers away from proprietary languages over into more traditional commoditized languages, open source languages, things of that nature. We're finally kind of opening that door to where we as AV control system programmers can merge with traditional software developers and work together to just improve things overall, to improve the overall result, integrate our systems collectively, as opposed to having siloed systems that frankly have been very, very difficult, if not impossible, to interoperate.
Well, and Steve, one of the things I've seen, and it's not always the case, but a lot of times the individuals that are successful as programmers, 5-10 years into their career, are people who started out really enjoying programming. There certainly are some that grow up through the ranks and learn, the AV progression, but I'm seeing some that, they start out as programmers, but they realize early on they might take that CS degree and they don't want to sit just in a cubicle, write code for, one of the big five, and that they're not just program or software developers. I'll even use the a better term. They want the hands-on, to see the fruits of their work. They want to see that progression of make my code actually do something. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, I think, if we're conscious of and watch for that, we can pick out, individuals who show that aptitude and really value that hands-on application of their programming talents, whether it's in the traditional manufacturer-based flavors of programming configuration, or as Nick points out, we're moving more into new skill sets. And again, finding individuals that have those skill sets, but also have that desire to be more hands-on with the results of their code. There's a lot of individuals out there that sort of fit that mold and have a lot of potential, that it can save us the frustration of finding wrong fits.
And just to tag on to that, the AV industry has a huge opportunity in finding the people that Dave just described, in that AV has the advantage of being able to represent your skills on a large physical scale. You're not just an icon on someone's phone at that point. You can stand back at the end of the day and look at a stadium or any large scale deployment and say, that's what I built, my team helped create that. And that's I think that's a huge incentive for a lot of people out there, and a lot of very talented people out there.
I think that's a great point, and I think that part of what we're suffering from is visibility, and part of it is just trying to find who are the people that really are passionate about doing what we're doing, because most of the people that we find that get into it tend to stick with it. So, Rich, I'm going to bring you back in. You mentioned about different teams and having the varied skill set and working with others, and I think that's a great way of looking at things. And are you finding more that programmers are working together on projects more so than in the past, rather than just taking on a project by themselves? And what's the driver for that?
I think that we're finding there's a little bit more of a common language when dealing with technicians, not necessarily people internally on your own team, but when you're dealing with, like when we deal with it, we consult and we do a lot of work with a lot of integrators all over the place. And they'll have people on staff who aren't necessarily programmers, but they've been through some of the basic programming functions. They're now learning some of the configurable solutions out there. So, whether it's the control floor software, the Crestron software, the Savant software, or any of that stuff that's out there, they're getting an understanding of what we've been doing for 20 years. And so these are, I love it. Like my favorite thing, and what I tell my integrators is, I'm like, send me your greenest guy. Send me your guy who doesn't know anything. And he is just going to follow me wherever we go if we happen to be on site. And the reason behind that has always been, you are going to learn how we do what we do the right way. Here is the reason why we do it. And even just basic things like, because again, I will say, if nothing else, the control system programmers, I feel, are some of the best troubleshooters in the industry, because we have to know everything. What we know about our stuff is the easy part. We have to become subject matter experts on everybody else's stuff. And so I find that that's something that once you bring that and vocalize that, as that's part of the skill set that you're bringing to the project, that's where you start creating your value to whoever you're working with. And I think if you pass that along to a younger programmer, or these guys who are, starting out as configurators basically, but maybe, like Dave was saying and like Nick was saying, maybe they find and they go, wow, I can do this. I mean, they where they start doesn't necessarily mean where they end. And the tools start becoming available. And you can open them up and say, hey, great. There's lots of online classes if you want to check things out, or if this is something you're really interested in, you want to figure out how this button, or how, why were we able to make this work? And so if it's somebody who's mechanically oriented, you're now making the translation to the software side of things as well. So in terms of how we bridge this all together, a big part of it, really is being willing to impart that knowledge and being willing to talk about what you do. Because like I said before, a lot of times what we do is a solitary task. I can't tell you how many times that, what it winds up being is the guy who shows up with the headphones and the laptop and he's just tapping away all day long and, and he pulls it out to talk to somebody and pops it back in. We need to get away from that, and that view and that stigma sometimes that it's seen on the job site. And I know it seems silly, but that's something that's real. That is, when people say they don't understand what we do, it's because we don't tell them. We don't walk them through the process. We don't explain, even when we make mistakes. Hey, this is what happened. I see what had happened. And so in the future, if you see this happen, you're going to be able to move your project along much more. Or, again, it's that tribal knowledge. And, I've gone for decades about, what was handed down to me. And it's true tribal knowledge. And we are, as the industry is evolving, and this portion of it, and we're moving into an adolescence from our industry standpoint. Now more than ever, it becomes a matter of, everybody's worried about guarding their secret sauce. There isn't any. It really isn't. And so it becomes a matter of saying, how can you as a professional hone your craft and expand your craft and educate people on your craft? And the easiest way, again, like I said, is just, it's hard for some. It really is hard for some, but getting over that hump to be able to talk about, this is what I do. This is why I do it. This is my process. This is how you can help me, and I'm looking to help you. And all of a sudden you start building these new dynamics that occur where you're valued as part of the team. You are that soothsayer. We already are. I mean, from the technology standpoint, we already are those soothsayers. We got to get over that inferiority complex, of being just the programmer, being pigeonholed or griping because we're only seen as just the programmer. Change it, and be part of that wave that changes it.
I think that's a great point, a great way to end today's show. I think one thing that I'll share there, and we've talked about this before, is that, there's definitely a big community of programmers that has been built. There's a lot of activity, on Facebook pages and so forth. There's a lot of sharing. And I also think that we can learn from those younger people that are coming into the industry, and it can be a two-way street. So that'll do it for today's show. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us and being part of it. First, I'd like to thank Dave Hatz from AVI Systems. Dave, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about AVI and the things that you're doing?
Well, certainly avisystems.com. Learn all about all the breadth of areas that AVI can help you with. For myself, I'm on LinkedIn, at Dave Hatz AVI on Twitter. But like I say, follow AVI Systems before you follow me. So,
thanks. Nick Miller, thanks for joining us and being on the show again. How can people get in touch with you and learn what you're up to?
Twitter, Facebook, just about anywhere else. You can find me as Nick Mill, NickMil. Excellent.
And last but not least, Uncle Richie, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your company?
Obviously, you can type my name into the interwebs and various things will pop up. But probably the best way is at Artfregosa on Twitter. Obviously, even on Facebook, we've been posting. We were just talking about it a bit. We've been trying to actively encourage the programming community to find ways to communicate with one another. Obviously, fregosadesign.com, but most importantly, find us here at AVNation.tv. Here on State of Control, Resi Week, AV Week, all of our associated shows. That would make me happy, is to come see Uncle, have a fireside chat with Uncle Richie at AV Nation.
The question that I have is, do you have the Uncle Richie tag yet anywhere on social media?
I should. Again, it is pretty much stuck with me. So that might be next.
Excellent. Well, another great show. You can reach me. My name is Steve Greenblatt at Steve Greenblatt on social media, as well as my company, Control Concepts, at controlconcepts.net. But most importantly, check out AVNation at avnation.tv. Check out this show, the weekly shows, AV Week and Resi Week, as well as many of the other related shows. As well, visit the underwriters who help to support these programs and the network and show them your appreciation. We'd also like to hear from you, so please put some feedback either on the website, reach out to us on social, or leave us a review in iTunes. I wanted to see if we can get the audience to participate in some questions. So if there's some things you want to hear, you want answered on a show, please shoot that over and we'll think of it as a future topic. That'll do it for today for State of Control. Thanks for joining us.